It's fine today. 大光です。明日から仕事です。3年ぶりの職業です。3年ぶりの仕事です。ちょっと緊張してるけど、雰囲気合う感じだったんで、給料高くないけど、頑張るかって感じです。さらば高等遊民の身分。Chapter 4 The Keeper of the Keys Boom They knocked again. 今日2章やろうと思います。多分。Chapter 4と Chapter 5を。ページだけかな。チャプター4が16ページで、チャプター5がちょっと長め。Boom! They knocked again. Dudley jerked awake. Where's the cannon? He said stupidly. There was a crash behind them and Uncle Vernon came skidding into the room. He was He was holding a rifle in his hands. Now they knew what had been in the long. The package he had brought with them. Who's there? He shouted. I want you. I'm armed. There was a pause. Then, smash. The door was hit with such force that it swung clean off its hinges and with a deafening crash landed flat on the floor. A giant of a man was standing in the doorway. His face was almost completely hidden by a long, shaggy mane of hair and a wild, tangled beard, but you could make out his eyes, glinting like black beetles under all the hair. The giant squeezed his way into the hut, stooping so that he had just brushed the ceiling. He bent down, picked up the door and fitted it easily back into its frame. The noise of the storm outside dropped a little. He turned to look at them all. Couldn't make us a cup of tea. Could you? It's not been an easy journey. He strolled over to the sofa where Dudley sat frozen with fear. Badge up, you great lamp, said the stranger. Dudley squeezed and ran to hide behind its mother, who was crouching terrified behind Uncle Vernon. And here's Harry, said the giant. Harry looked up into the fierce, wild, shadowy face and saw that the bitter eyes were crinkled in a smile. Last time I saw you, you was only a baby, said a giant. You look a lot like your dad, but you've got your man's eyes. Uncle Vernon made a funny rasping noise. I demand that you leave at once, sir, he said. You are breaking and entering. Shut up, Dudley, you great plum, said the giant. He reached over the back of the sofa, jerked the gun out of Uncle Vernon's hands, bent it into a knot as easily as if it had been made of rubber, and threw it into a corner of the room. Uncle Vernon made another funny noise, like a mouse being trodden on. Anyway, Harry, said the giant, turned his back on the Dudleys. A very happy birthday to you. Got smashed for you here. I might have sat on it at some point, but it'll taste alright. From an inside pocket of his back overcoat, he pulled a slightly squashed box. Harry opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a large, sticky chocolate cake with "Happy Birthday, Harry" written on it in green icing. Harry looked up at the giant. He meant to say thank you, but the words got lost on the way to his mouth. And what he said instead was, "Who are you?" The giant chuckled. "True, I haven't introduced myself. Rubeus Hagrid, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts." He held out an enormous hand and shook Harry's whole arm. "What about the tea then?" he said, rubbing his hands together. "I'd not say no tea not somewhat stronger if Yeb got it. Mind." His eyes fell on the empty grate with the shriveled crisp packets in it, and he snorted. He bent down over the fireplace. They couldn't see what he was doing, but when he drew back a second later, there was a roaring fire there. It filled the whole damp hut with flickering light, and Harry felt the warm wash over him as though he'd suck into a hot bath. The giant sat back down on the sofa, which suggested under his weight, and began taking all sorts of things out of the pockets of his coat: a copper kettle, a scratchy package of sausages, a poker, a teapot, several chipped mugs, and a bottle of some amber liquid which he took a swig from before starting to make tea. Soon the hut was full of the sound and smell of sizzling sausage. Nobody said a thing while the giant was working. But as he slid the first six part, juicy, slightly burnt sausages from the poker, Dudley fidgeted a little. Uncle Vernon said sharply, "Don't touch anything he gives you, Dudley." The giant chuckled darkly, yet great pardon of us some don't need fattening anymore. Dudley, don't worry. He passed the sausages to Harry, who was so hungry he had never tasted anything so wonderful, but he still couldn't take his eyes off the giant. Finally, as nobody seemed about to explain anything, he said, "I'm sorry, but I still don't really know who you are." The giant took a gulp of tea and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Call me Hagrid," he said. "Everyone does. And like I told you, I'm keeper of keys at Hogwarts. You'll know all about Hogwarts, of course." No," said Harry. Hagrid looked shocked. "Sorry," Harry said quickly. "Sorry?" barked Hagrid, turning to stare at the Dudleys, who shrunk back into the shadows. It's them as should be sorry. I knew you weren't getting your letters, but never thought you wouldn't even know about Hogwarts. For crying out loud. That did you never wonder where your parents learned it all? こいつの余りがひでえ。All what? asked Harry. All what? Hagrid thundered. Now wait just 1 second. He had leaped to his feet. In his anger, he seemed to feel the wild heart. The Dudleys were quarreling against the wall. Do you mean tell me? He glared at the Dudleys. That this boy, know nothing about anything. Harry thought this was going a bit far. He had been to school, after all, and his marks weren't bad. I know some things, he said. I can, do maths and stuff. But Hagrid simply waved his hand and said, About our world. I mean, your world, my world, your parents' world. What world? Hagrid looked as if he was about to explode. Dursley! He boomed. Uncle Vernon, who had gone very pale, whispered something that sounded like mimbling. Hagrid stared widely at Harry. But you must know about your mom and dad, he said. I mean, they're famous. You're famous. What? My mom and dad weren't famous, were they? You don't know. Hagrid ran his fingers through his hair, fixing Harry with a bewildered stare. You don't know what you are? He said finally. Uncle Vernon suddenly found his voice. Stop! He commanded. Stop right here, stop right there. Sir, I forbid you to tell the boy anything. A braver man than Vernon Dursley would have quailed under the furious look Hagrid now gave him. When Hagrid spoke, his every syllable trembled with rage. You never told him? Never told him what was in the letter Dumbledore left for him? I was there. I saw Dumbledore leave it. Dursley. And you've kept it from him all these years? Kept what for me? Said Harry angrily. Stop! I forbid you! Yelled Uncle Vernon in panic. Aunt Petunia gave a gasp of horror. Oh, go burn your heads, both of you, said Hagrid. Harry, you're a wizard. There was silence inside the hut. Only he see and the whistling wind could be heard. I'm a what? Gasped Harry. A wizard, of course, said Hagrid, sitting back down on the sofa, which groaned and sank even lower, and something gooden. I'd say, was you been trained up a bit, with a mum and dad like yours? What else would you be? I reckon it's about time you read your letter. Harry stretched out his hand at last to take the yellowish envelope addressed in emerald green to Mr. Harry Potter, Mr. H. Potter. The floor, hot on the rock, the sea. He pulled out the letter and read. 喉がガラガラする。Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster Albus Dumbledore. Order of Merlin. First Class. Grand Sock. Chief Warlock. Supreme Magwamp. International Confed of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have a place at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Then begins on 1 September. We await you all by no later than 30 July. 1 September から終業。私とも同じだ。Yours sincerely. 大光と同じだ。一人称が。キャラがブレ続ける。VTuber らしく VTuber らしい特殊な一人称を使おうとしてるのに。大光。もしくは、まあ大光でいいけど、Twitter が大光なので。Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. Questions exploded inside Harry's head like fireworks, and he couldn't decide which to ask first. After a few minutes, he stammered. What does it mean? They await my own galloping gargons. That reminds me, said Hagrid, clapping a hand to his forehead with enough force to knock over a cat house. And from yet another pocket inside his overcoat he pulled an owl. A real, live, leather-ruffled-looking owl, a long quill and a roll of parchment. With his tongue between his teeth, he scribbled a note which Harry could read upside down. Dear Mr. Dumbledore, giving Harry his letter, taking him to buy his things tomorrow. Weather's horrible. Hope you're well, Hagrid. Hagrid rolled up the note, gave it to the owl, which clamped it in his beak, went to the door and threw the owl out into the storm. Then he came back and sat down as though this was normal as talking on the telephone. Harry realized his mouth was open and closed it quickly. Where was I? Said Hagrid. But at that moment, Uncle Vernon, still ashen-faced but looking very angry, moved into the firelight. He's not going, he said. Hagrid grunted. I'd like to see a great muggle like you stop him, he said. A what? Said Harry, interested. A muggle, said Hagrid. It's what we call non-magic folk like them. It's your bad luck you grew up in a family of the biggest bugs I never laid eyes on. We saw when we took him in, we'd put a stop to that rubbish, said Uncle Vernon. Swore we'd stamp it out of him. Wizard indeed. You know, said Harry. You knew I'm a wizard? Knew, shrieked Aunt Petunia suddenly. Knew. Of course we knew. How could you not be? My daughter's sister being what she was, oh, she got a letter just like that and disappeared off to the school, and came home even every holiday with her pockets full of frog puffspan, turning teacups into rats. I was the only one who saw her for what she was, a freak. But for my mother and father, oh no, it was really this and really that. They were proud of having a witch in the family. She stopped to draw a deep breath, and they then went ranting on. It seemed she had been wanting to say all this for years. She met the Potter at school, and they left and got married and had you. Oh, and of course I knew you'd be just the same, just as strange, just as abnormal. And then, if you please, she went and got herself blown up, and we got landed with you. Harry had gone very white. As soon as he found his voice, he said, "Blow up?" He told me they died in a car crash. Car crash, roared Hagrid, jumping up so angry that the Dursleys scattered, scattered back to the corner. How could a car crash kill Lily and James Potter? It's an outrage, a scandal. Harry Potter not known his own story when every kid in our world knows his name. But why? What happened? Harry asked urgently. The anger faded from Hagrid's face. He looked suddenly anxious. I never expected this, he said, in a low, worried voice. I had no idea. When Dumbledore told me there might be trouble getting hold of here. How much here didn't know. Harry, I don't know if I'm the right person to tell here, but someone's got her. Yeah, can't go off Hagrid not knowing. He threw a dirty look at the Dudleys. Well, it's best you know as much as I can tell your mind. I can't tell you everything. It's great mystery parts of it. He sat down, stared into the fire for a few seconds, and then said, "It begins, I suppose, with a person called, but it's incredible yet they don't know his name. Everyone in our world knows. Who? Well, I don't like saying the name if I can help it. No one does. Why no?" Gulping goggles, Harry. People are still scared. Believe me, this is difficult. Still, there was that wizard who went bad. As bad as you could go. Worse than worse. His name was Hagrid gulped, but no words came out. Could you write it down? Harry suggested. No, can't spell it. All right, Voldemort. Hagrid shuddered. Don't make me say it again. Anyway, this wizard, about 20 years ago now, started looking for followers. Got them too. Some were afraid. Some just wanted a bit of his power. 'Cause he was getting himself power. All right, dark days. Harry didn't know who to trust. Didn't dare get friendly with strange wizards or witches. Terrible things happened. He was taken over. 'Cause some stood up to him, and he killed them horribly. One of the only safe places left was Hogwarts, like on Dumbledore's the only one you know who was afraid of. Didn't dare try taking the school. Not just them, anyway. No. Your mom and dad were as good a witch and wizard as I ever knew. Head boy and girl at Hogwarts in the day. Suppose the mystery is why you know who never tried to get them on his side before. Probably knew they were too close to Dumbledore to want anything to do with the dark side. Maybe he thought he could persuade them. Maybe he just wanted them out of the way. All anyone knows. He turned up in the village where you was all living. On Halloween 10 years ago, you was just a year old. He came to your house. Hagrid suddenly pulled out a very dirty, stuffed handkerchief and blew his nose with spotted handkerchief and blew his nose with a sound like a foghorn. Sorry, he said, but it's that sad. Knew your mom and dad, and nicer people you couldn't find anyway. You know who killed them and them. And this is the real mystery of the thing. He tried to kill you too. Wanted to make a clean job of it. I suppose. Or maybe he just liked killing by them. But he couldn't do it. Never wondered how you got that mark on your forehead? That was no ordinary cut. That's what you get when a powerful evil cause touches you. Took care of your mama, dada, your house. Even ハリウッドの名前超ムカつくんだけど、全然入ってこねえよ。 ハグリッドの話し方マジムカつく。Even, but it didn't work on you. And that's why you're famous. Harry. No one ever lived after he decided to kill one, no one except you. And he'd killed some of the best witches and wizards of the age. The Mackinons, the Bonds, the Privets. And you was only a baby, and you lived. Something very painful was going on in Harry's mind. As Hagrid's story came to a close, he saw again the blinking flash of green light, more clearly than he had ever remembered it before. And he remembered something else. For the first time in his life, a high, cold, cruel laugh. Hagrid was watching him steadily. Took years from the ruined house myself, on Dumbledore's orders. Blood yet tear the throat. ターっていうのは何なのかな。ザか。ザじゃない嫌なと聞きまし。Lord of Old Tosh, said Uncle Vernon. Harry jumped. He had almost forgotten that the Dursleys were there. Uncle Vernon suddenly seemed to have got back his courage. He was glaring at Hagrid, and his fists were clenched. Now you listen here, boy, he snarled. I accept there's something strange about you. Probably nothing a good beating wouldn't have cured. And as for all this about your parents, well, they were weird. No denying it. And the world's better off without them, in my opinion. Ask for all they got. Getting mixed up with these wizarding types. Just what I accepted. Always knew they'd come to a sticky end. But at the moment, Hagrid leaped from the sofa and drew a battered pink umbrella from inside his coat. Pointing this at Uncle Vernon like a sword, he said, I'm warning you, Dursley. I'm warning you. One more word. In danger of being speared on the end of an umbrella by a bearded giant, Uncle Vernon's courage failed again. He flattened himself against the wall and fell silent. That's better, said Hagrid, breathing heavily and sitting back down on the sofa, which this time sagged right down to the floor. Harry, meanwhile, still had questions to ask. Hundreds of them. But what happened to Vol? Sorry, I mean, you know who? Good question. Harry disappeared. Vanished same night he tried to kill you. Makes ya even more famous. That's the biggest mystery. He was getting more and more powerful. Where'd he go? Some say he died. could develop, in my opinion. Do you know if he had enough human left in him to die? Some say he's still out there, biding his time, but I don't believe it. People who was on his side came back after hours. Some of them came out of kinda trances. Don't reckon they could done if he was coming back. Most of us reckon he's still out there somewhere but lost his powers. Too quick to carry on. Cause something about you finished him, Harry. There was something going on the night he couldn't count it on. I don't know what it was, no one does, but something about you stopped him, all right. Hagrid looked hard at Harry with warmth and respect blazing in his eyes. But Harry, instead of feeling pleased and proud, felt quite sure there had been a horrible mistake. A wizard? Him? How could he possibly be? He'd spent his life being clothed by Dudley and bullied by Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon. If he was really a wizard, why hadn't they been turned into rusty turtles every time they'd tried to look him in his cupboard? If he was defeated the greatest sorcerer in the world, how come Dudley had always been able to kick him around like a football? Hagrid, he said quietly, I think you must have made a mistake. I don't think I can be a wizard. To his surprise, Hagrid chuckled. Not a wizard, eh? Never made things happen when you was scared or angry? Harry looked into the fire. Now he came to think about it. Every odd thing that had ever made his aunt and uncle furious with him had happened with me. Harry had been upset or angry, chased by Dudley's gang. He had somehow found himself out of that reach, dreading going to school with that ridiculous haircut. ちょっと辞書タイム。He'd managed to make it grow up, and the very last time Dudley had hit him, hadn't he got his revenge, without even realizing he was doing it? Hadn't he set a boa constrictor on him? Harry looked back at Hagrid, smiling and saw that Hagrid was positively beaming at him. See? Said Hagrid. Harry Potter, not a wizard. You're right. You'll be lad famous at Hogwarts. But Uncle Vernon wasn't going to give in without a fight. Haven't I told you he's not going? He hissed. He's going to Stonewall High and he'll be grateful for it. I read those letters and he needs all sorts of rubbish, spell books and words that. If he wants to go, a great muggle like you want to stop him. Growled Hagrid. Stop Lily and James Potter's son going to Hogwarts. You're mad. His name's been down ever since he was born. He's off to the first school of witchcraft and wizardry in the world. 7 years there and he won't know himself. He'll be with youngsters of his own sort. Fair change. And he'll be under the greatest headmaster Hogwarts ever had, Albus Dumbledore. I am not paying for some crackpot old fool to teach him magic tricks, yelled Uncle Vernon. But he had finally gone too far. Hagrid seized his umbrella and wheeled it over his head. Never. He thundered. Insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me. He brought the umbrella swishing down through the air to point at Dudley. There was a flash of violent light, a sound like a firecracker, a sharp squeal, and next second, Dudley was dancing on the spot with his hands clasped over his fat bottom, howling in pain. When he turned his back on them, Harry saw a curly pig's tail poking through a hole in his trousers. Uncle Vernon roared, pulling Aunt Petunia and Dudley into the room. He cast one last terrified look at Hagrid and slammed the door behind them. Hagrid looked down at his umbrella and stroked his beard. Shouldn't lost me temper, he said roughly, but it didn't work anyway. Me turn him into a pig. But I suppose he was so much like a pig anyway there wasn't much left to do. He cast a sideways look at Harry under his bushy eyebrows. Be grateful if you didn't mention that to anyone at Hogwarts, he said. I'm not supposed to do magic. Strictly speaking, I was allowed to do a bit for and get letters to and stuff. On all the reasons, I was so keen to take on the job. Why aren't you supposed to do magic? Asked Harry. Oh well, I was at Hogwarts myself, but I got expelled to tell you the truth. In mid-third year, they slapped me one in half on everything, but Dumbledore let me stay on as gamekeeper. Great man, Dumbledore. Why were you expelled? It's getting late and we've got lots to do tomorrow, said Hagrid loudly. Gotta get up to town. Get all your books and that. He took off his thick black coat and threw it to Harry. You can keep under that, he said. Don't mind if it rings a bit. I think I still got a couple of dummies in one of the pockets.
はあ、第4章チャプター4終わり。ちょっと疲れた。44分。
だけど今日はここまで。ハグリッドの鉛が長期ムカついた回でした。はい、おしまい。サリュー。なんでこんな傾くの？傾くな。アバター傾くな。